ideas, I'll find a word. Let's close all of the doors. Got ideas, I'll find a word. Let's close all of the doors. Got ideas, I'll find a word. Let's close all of the doors. Fears of a second war in Europe as Azerbaijan launches a military attack. Now, at first glance, a lot of people will overlook this and go, okay, don't know about that. Of course, when you look at their allies, it looks like this could very quickly turn into a second proxy conflict between the U.S. and Russia, being that one side is allied with the U.S. and Turkey and Israel, and one side is allied, of course, with Russia. So this is something that is something that nobody really wants to see, but this is also something you would see when you start getting into, say, a world war, where you have almost every country at each other's throats. So let's go over this again. It says that Azerbaijan carried out strikes on the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region on Tuesday as it announced the launch of a, quote, anti-terror operation, a move that threatens to trigger another conflict in the region. It says that the country's defense ministry said that it was using high-precision weapons to incapacitate Armenian-backed forces and target Armenian military positions in a push to force out formations of Armenia's armed forces. It says footage purportedly filmed in Stepanakert, the capital of Karabakh, which is called Karakendi, by Azerbaijan, captured the sounds of loud shelling and artillery fire. The gravedigger, it says, at this moment, the capital Stepanakert and other cities and villages under intensive fire. An Armenia-based separatist group warned on social media, calling it a large-scale military offensive. Now, again, this is in Europe, and I believe if you look at a map, it is by the Black Sea. So this is not something that needs to really happen, hopefully, and this is something that could be very bad in the overall picture if we start supporting a second conflict going on in Europe. So we're going to talk about this and much, much more tonight on Marfoogle News. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in the show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, what is going on, guys? It's Adam, a.k.a. Marf, and this is Marfoogle News. Today, we're going to cover a lot in a short amount of time. So remember, over on the website is a full bibliography of all of our sources. Every single article, tweet, video, picture, document we're going to cover here today will be available over there at your fingertips. That way you know exactly where we got the information, and nobody can say that we are using bad info, or at least if they are, they can go verify it for themselves and say why it's bad. Now, there's a lot here today, and a lot of overlooked kind of things that are going on right now. Obviously, many people are talking about who's getting knocked off. I will remind you, right before in 2019, right before huge events went down, there were certain people that were basically knocked off. So that's what worries me. And there is a cycle of that happening. There's at least 6 or 7 big names / companies / entities that are now gone. And that really does not make me feel good about the near future. My prediction is in the next few months, we're going to see a whole lot happen. My prediction is in the next 10 to 12 months that we will see a conflict, a much bigger conflict than we are seeing now. I believe China will even take Taiwan. So we'll talk about why I think that, and of course we'll get Dex's opinion and everything else. And while we're on the subject, let's bring in my co-host/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam. Hello, Fugle fam. I'm doing just fine.
So as far as this second conflict, and remember, make sure to drop an M in the chat for the wonderful mods, and go support them by going over to marfooglenews.com/friends. Lots and lots of really, really great people over there, so make sure to go pop over and subscribe. Okay, so Dex, this second conflict, right before the show, I had you look up their alliances, and essentially what did you find?
Well, recently it says that in the most recent years, Azerbaijan has been more aligned with Western countries, specifically the U.S. and Israel and even Turkey, but Turkey being near a closer neighbor to them. And that the other country they're talking about here is Armenia, has been very much aligned with Russia. So I think, when you look at something like this, while there may be merits to their own conflict and what may or may not ensue from that, there's also merits in understanding the idea that both of these sides are actually backed by two different adversaries right now that are basically fueling another conflict that's happening in Europe. So I think that's what the big concern is. Hopefully this won't turn into something bigger, but it quite possibly could.
And this is something like where, when you have multiple conflicts going on over in Europe, that starts to turn into World War. I mean, you're talking about in World War II, you had all parts of Europe inflamed between multiple countries. You had the Allied countries against the enemy countries, and they were all battling over different places all over the place. That's essentially what people are worried about happening again. And now if this turns into a full-scale conflict, of course, they have allies. So then you get into something that could be quite bigger. Who knows, though? There might be something that we don't know about as far as, what will this look like? If the world goes into another world war, obviously we are seeing in the last 2 years, all of the countries have chose their side. I would call it that, because if you look, all of the allied countries have kind of shored up their alliances, and then all of the enemy countries have shored up their alliances. They're all meeting. They were all traveling to each other's countries and visiting presidents. They're all meeting. They're all doing these kind of tours of meeting other leaders. As far as we have also had countries that are supposed to be allies say that they're now distancing themselves from us. And by us, I mean the U.S., where I am at, right? Like France, meeting with China's Xi Jinping, and within a few days says, yeah, we're actually going to be distancing ourselves from the U.S. Mind you, this is right after we kind of screwed France over by taking Australia, the deal away from France, and said, hey, Australia, we'll give you subs in 2 years instead of you waiting 14 years or whatever it was, under the AUKUS deal, right? Under the whole AUKUS thing that went down. So there are many countries that are choosing sides. South Africa most recently joined military drills with Russia, China, and India. India is also one that's like up in the air. And if we do go into a world conflict scenario, what will that actually look like? What will it physically look like on the ground? Will we have countries like Azerbaijan, and I'm sorry, I probably said it wrong a million times, Azerbaijan and Armenia going at it as well? You have places all over the place next to their neighbors that they've hated for a long time. It's so crazy how many smaller internal kind of beefs that all of these countries have. What will it look like? And do you think that there are countries that are kind of aligned with these other sources? If there is a main war, will they just be sending their soldiers off to help the main conflict wherever it is? Or do you think that them and their neighbors, if they're on opposite sides, will start going at it as well? I would think that the latter would happen, and that this thing would go really, really big. Now, there was a statement by Zelensky. We'll actually talk about that later. This was a real quote from his speech, pushing the worlds towards the final war. Very very kind of eerie. And I wondered why, like, if it was just poor translation, but why he said the final war, right? Not WW3, not anything else. The final war. And that's what many people consider it. But I don't think it's the end of the world. I'm not saying the end of the world is coming. I believe that a conflict, especially a WW3, will be the start of a new one that not many of us will like, and that will completely change the face of the planet. Again, something that we're not going to all, we're not going to all perish. But I think that the values and the morals of today, whatever's left of them, will. So, and all of the different things and freedoms that we have now probably will as well. Remember to go over and check out marfooglenews.com for notifications, because if you're not getting notifications for one reason or another, you can always sign up for notifications there, and that's guaranteed to send out through that system, being that you can get those. We can't do Apple yet. That's actually a long-term thing we've been waiting for forever. But if you do have Chrome, you can get it on there, or again, a web browser. All right, and then let's see here. Dex, do you want to go over the 48 hours to 28 hours to find the F-35? How did it take the Pentagon 28 hours to find this thing?
Yeah, so this is, and it was only 80 miles from the base. So, there's a lot of questions that are going on. And this article has done a fairly decent job of sort of outlining everything up to this point as to where things stand. There's a couple of interesting things I want to highlight specifically, and one that I actually spoke to an Air Force fighter pilot about. And that is that the fact that there was a wingman. So as you have read the story, probably in numerous different iterations and small chunks here and there since the weekend, this one sort of lays it all out in great detail. There was a wingman that was flying, and or a partner, however you want to refer to it. But usually you have a lead pilot, and then you have a wing. Any other additional flights or planes are considered wingmen. The wingman was there and returned to base after the incident happened. So the question I asked another Air Force fighter jet pilot is, why on earth would a wingman leave an ejected pilot and not maintain visual on both the pilot and potentially even the plane? It makes no sense. And he said there's absolutely no reason except for a couple of conditions that would make sense. If you're in a hostile environment and safety was important, you needed to bail out. If the weather was extremely, extremely bad, severe weather, and with these kind of jets, I think it has to be pretty severe because they can pretty much go through just about anything.
Or they could go above
the last one, yeah, and the last one being, if as he called it, bingo, but being out of fuel. Well, none of those things actually apply. The weather was fine. They weren't that far away. They probably had plenty of fuel at the time. But he also said, no matter what, if he did return to base, or RTB as he called it, he said that was obviously an order from a command to higher than him, because they're typically trained to watch or stay with their wingman no matter what happens. So that's an interesting question that a lot of people, I don't think, are even asking. Like, why did he return and not pay attention to where this was going down?
Because people didn't know. People didn't know there was a wingman. They didn't say that in the first place. That is absolutely wild. That tells me right there everything I need to know. I firmly believe this thing either got hit with something or hacked, and that they were worried about their other jet, another $80 million, either getting hit or hacked. That's what I think, but that's just my personal opinion.
I have to agree with you on that one, Adam. I think that if something happened to that plane and they thought it was nefarious, that they probably told the wingman, get out of there because we don't want to lose a second one, right? That's my assumption. It's just my assumption. It's nothing more than that, or my opinion. Now, if you look at the pictures, and if you want to scroll down, you can see there are pictures of this crash site. So here is the other interesting thing I think about when I look at this crash site. And according to the fighter pilot I spoke to, his other concern was, hey, he's really curious why the ELT, which is the electronic locator emergency locator transmitter. It's basically, we call it a black box or whatever you want to call it. Why it didn't go off. They're actually designed to go off at around 5 Gs of inertia, which is typical of a crash. They also can be set off if the pilot intentionally flips them on. But it's basically there to put off a beacon and retain any type of data that it may have had. and survive. They are actually built to survive the crash. That's the whole intention. I spoke to another person who was a former person who works for manufacturers that make these planes, and he said, yeah, those things are literally we call them indestructible. They're meant to withstand the whole thing because that's their job, is to live after the crash and put off a signal so they can be found. So why did the ELT not go off? Why were they not able to just do that? Why do they have to ask the public, hey, can you help us find our lost plane? So those are some really interesting questions that I think haven't really been raised and should be asked and talked about. But now when we look at these pictures, here's the last thing I want to add. Looking at these pictures that they claim, and I'm going to say claim because they is the government. And as soon as the crash site was, or the debris field, as they originally called it, it was immediately quarantined off and under control of the U.S. Marine Corps. But this is what they're claiming is the site. But they're also suggesting, and this is the reporter suggesting based on the photographs, that it may have gone through some trees before it crashed. Now, I'm no expert when it comes to plane crashes. I have no clue when it comes to looking at this, but when you have a debris field that really isn't a debris field, and this really looks like that first picture where there's just a bare spot on the ground and everything is disintegrated and gone, that's kind of typical of a plane going basically head into hard dirt, and it's just, it's gone. We've seen that before in the Everglades. We've seen that before in, unfortunately, what happened in the September event in Pennsylvania. Those are the types of images we've seen. But this one has allegedly gone through trees, which would make you think its descent was slow and not straight down. If it did clip through these trees, wouldn't there be a lot more of it left to be seen here? That's the question I have. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm going to leave that out there. You tell me what you think. But that's why when I look at this article, when I talk to the people I talked to today, and when you look at these images that have been published, I think those are some additional questions that are worthy of asking. And I think this is still a huge cluster as it relates to the DoD and as it relates to the military industrial complex.
Yeah, and so if you know about the F-35 Lightning IIs, how they said 15 tons, right? I heard 15 tons. How strong are the wings? Could they clip something like this? It shows trees basically chopped in half, right? But then it goes through these trees, cuts them in half, and then lands and literally disintegrates. Now, somebody else mentioned to me that there's a chance that if there's the AI technology in it, that they don't take chances and they could self-implode it or have it disintegrate or something. This was not from a Air Force person or anybody that would actually know. They just said, hey, wonder if that could happen. I don't know. You guys from the Air Force can tell me. There's lots of military in the audience right now. Do they have, if this was over enemy territory, do they have a self-destruct type of thing so somebody doesn't get that technology that will just obliterate it? But when you look at the pictures, it looks pretty nuts, right? And again, like Dex said, back in September in 2001, when that event happened, that one of those planes, they didn't find anything bigger than a bread box, and that's been debated over a long set of years. But as far as somebody says that, I think it was Michael that says they cannot be hacked. We actually just covered a story last night. They can be hacked. Anything can be hacked that has computers. They most definitely probably have, some of the best defenses in the world. But saying it's not hacked, or they're not hackable, I don't think that could be proved. I don't think that could be proven. Maybe it's not provable that they are hackable, but I don't think that they would put that information out anyways. But if you did get parts in it, if you had some sort of backdoor placed in this thing in some sort of chip, there is a chance of that. But also, even if it wasn't hacked, it could be EMP'd. We just covered the weapons that do that actually knock out the MEMS chips, the microchips that have, what is it called? Micro electronic memory
electromechanical. So it's basically a mechanical chip like inertia or gyroscope.
Yep. So that can be knocked out by even, say, a balloon. Those balloons, the one balloon that China sent over, that one we don't know about, but that we do know that they have a production factory there that they believe is mass producing these balloons. Now, those balloons can carry a certain weight that could carry one of these essentially compressor launcher things that can launch an EMP at a targeted thing and knock out the MEMS chips. So something happened here. Why would they tell the wingman to turn around? Why wouldn't the wingman, circle around and wait for his co-pilot to land? I would think that they would have, be right next to the guy, but if not, they would be going and flying with the jet. I'm sure they realized right away what happened. They would track that jet all the way to the ground. It makes no sense to tell them to go back unless there was some reason for it, unless there was something up in the sky. Now, some UFO folks are going to say there was a UFO there and this is a big cover-up. Who knows? It could be. But for them to ask the public and for us to find out that there was an actual wingman, if the wingman knows that the other pilot ejected and he's going down, and right away he's going to know from base, people are going to know the jet stays going. He's going to know it's on AI. He's going to tell him the jet keeps going. Why in the world would the government or the military go, yeah, just let it go, when it is over land in the United States? That just does not make any sense at all. So something way bigger happened here, and I foresee what I've already foreseen, which is a lot of things are about to go down, and this may have a very nefarious backstory and something that's going on that we'll never hear about. But this is why I tell people, have a basic plan, because things are getting absolutely crazy. Dex, go ahead.
And I would like to point out these pictures also validate something that you and I talked about when we first heard about the debris field, which is, wouldn't somebody see this? And the validation that I'm seeing is that this is not in an unpopulated area. In fact, there's photographs of white picket fences and very well paved roads in some of these pictures where this debris field is. So this tells, it may be sparse, but I think the real question is, are we going to hear from anybody, any witnesses that actually live there? I can't imagine an F-35 coming down in your backyard and you not hearing it or potentially even seeing it. And maybe even more, if you saw something before, you might have even pulled your phone out and captured it. So now all of that may be being scrambled to be taken and not released, but it will be interesting to see what comes of the citizens that are in that area that can confirm what they're telling us actually happened.
And it has a part, and this is something we covered back, but I might have been on my own back then, but 2019, Pentagon was concerned that these planes could be hacked, that they could be vulnerable by hackers. So that says right there that they at least know that this is a possibility, that they could be hacked. Now, if they do end up coming out and say this was hacked, what is the thing there? Or if it really was a hack, or if it was an EMP attack from something, right? What does that mean? It most definitely, the story as it goes doesn't make sense. So a lot of us are going to think in our heads, then what really happened? If we don't believe the actual story on this, then whatever happened is quite scary. Because saying that it just had a glitch and the transponder didn't work, like something does not sit right. That it sounds like somebody else had a control over it and turned off the transponder. And for it to go, or is this AI? Did they just realize AI could literally, fling out the pilot and go out on its own? They are testing, putting some of the most advanced artificial intelligence in these exact planes. Don't know if, I shouldn't say exact, but this exact type of plane, they are testing this really super sophisticated AI. Was this one of those planes? Already it has some sort of AI for the autopilot and things like that, but we're talking about a whole nother level of AI being put in these things to where they can fly without pilots. They're trying to make these unmanned completely by a certain year, which is just so freaky. Top Gun points it out, like I said the other day. Top Gun, in that movie, they're like, hey, you're some of the last aces. These are all going to be unmanned. That was not a fictional thing. That's a real thing. That's something we've covered, and even covered some of the patents and some of the things that they're passing through. And they have goals. They have deadlines and things they want to meet to try to make these all unmanned. Think about how deadly these planes are, these jets. and then think about them unmanned with no risk to life other than whoever they're attacking. So this is really nuts. Thank you, JD Salmon. Thank you for subscribing. Ronald Jove, Derek, Ohio. Thank you guys, by the way. I didn't want to say anything because to jinx it or whatever, but we did hit 200, but I probably wait to celebrate for a little bit because it goes up and goes down, and it was actually at 199 for a very long time. So we'll see. One weekend that could change again. So, but thank you guys. I am super, super appreciative of every person that's here, every person that ends up subscribing and hitting that notification bell. Thank you guys for joining the Mafia. All right, and then we have South Korea's Yoon warns against Russia-North Korea military cooperation and plans to discuss it at the UN. Whatever they may end up going over at this thing, essentially the South Korea's Prez says, this is not good. Essentially saying North Korea and Russia hanging out is not a fun thing. He doesn't. They do not want this happening. It says South Korea's president said the international community will unite more tightly to cope with the deepening military cooperation between Russia and NK as he plans to raise the issue with the leaders of the UN General Assembly. It says worries about Russia-North Korean ties have flared since NK leader Kim Jong-un traveled to Russia last week for a summit with President Putin. It says, and a slew of high-profile military and technology sites. Foreign experts speculate Kim could refill Russia's ammunition inventory drained in its 18-month conflict in UKR in return for economic aid and technologies to modernize weapon systems targeting SK and the U.S. Military cooperation between North Korea and Russia is illegal and unjust as it contravenes UN Security Council resolutions and various other international sanctions. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol said in a written response to questions from the AP before his departure to New York to attend the UN General Assembly. The international community will unite more tightly in response to such a move. So, this is obviously something that when it first happened, some people laugh at it and they're like, whatever. But we're talking about the forming of a WW2. I could see North Korean soldiers sort of Red Dawn style in Europe fighting right alongside Russia. So this is something that's pretty alarming. Plus, they can do whatever they want in NK as far as illegal things and black market things. And who knows what's coming next. What do you guys think? Tell me in the comments below. Dex, do you have any feedback?
The one thing that came to my mind on this was going back to Kim's visit into Russia on the train and him meeting with Putin. And Putin gave him those gifts. And part of those gifts were 5 drones. I think 4 or 5 of them were what they call one way, or you can use other terms to describe those drones. And another one was a recon drone. I wonder if it wasn't just to give him those to use, but rather give him those to recreate and build. And I think that's the kind of stuff that really bothers South Korea, given the tension between those two countries, and given the fact that they're still at a constant state of conflict, just with this, DMZ put in place and the ceasefire put in place. So. I think I'd be a little concerned about that. If we start to see these drones being popped out left and right from NK, because now he has the blueprint, so to speak, and some actual ones to recreate, then that will be an interesting tell from the outcome of that meeting.
One of the quotes by Yoon says, our two countries, South Korea and the U.S., reaffirmed that any nuclear attack by North Korea will be met with a swift, overwhelming, and decisive response that will bring about the end of the regime. So they again mention nuclear. They have talked about nuclear. Many of us believe it's just a fear thing, like nukes aren't ever going to be a thing. I personally believe that there could be a single nuke that goes off somewhere, something that really triggers a horrific response inside of all of us. The thing is, especially with all of these people getting knocked off, I don't know if you realize this, but as far as information is one of the conflicts that we are currently in, and by we, the world. And when you see essentially anybody that kind of goes against what's happening just left and right, having one reason or another getting knocked off, and the reasons don't really match, or they're over here, but they're kicking them off over here. That's the kind of thing you see right before big stuff happens. And TOS changes to a lot of these platforms just weeks ago, just tweaking little things so you just all of a sudden can't talk about something nobody cared about 2 weeks before that. Tells me something is heading our way, and you guys have been warned. I would say I would say please look at what happened prior and think on that kind of level. A very, very big event that could affect us all. If you prepare for things like that, you will be just fine. A lot of the times you will be completely coasting through while everybody else is struggling to find all of these things. We're talking about supply chain, people looting, people taking up and overstocking up on things, so where the shelves are empty and these things. That is something that happens after really, really big events, and that's something that preppers don't really worry about, because if that does happen, they go into their stockpile. They don't go into the Costco. So just think about that, be responsible with it, and understand that if you're seeing these patterns really early, you have time. You have time to prep for any big disaster that may happen. And if it doesn't happen, if you're responsible about it and you don't sell your house and dig a hole, then you will not be hurt by it. If nothing happens, you'll have extra stuff, you'll have extra food, you'll have extra water. So just a thought, again, with everything that's happening, most of you guys are already on that page, and you're seeing the patterns we're seeing right now. So again, that is recommendations from all of us, not just myself, but all of my peers are saying the exact same thing, and all of the military folks in our audience are saying it. I guess the only downside is it's financially hard to start prepping and things like this. That's why you have to do it thriftily. That's why you have to do it slowly and over time, and try to see as far ahead as you can, and prepare for the unexpected. And when you do that in a slow and paced way, it's not going to hurt you, and it's only going to help. And again, a lot of people during regular times, when they rotate out their food, they'll eat it. Instead of going to the store, they can just go into their stockpile, and if something's about to expire, they'll go and eat it. So it really doesn't hurt you, because you can use those things after however long before they expire. Thank you, Chance, for holding down D-Live. Skyhouse, Johnson, Island by the Sea. Michelle K, thank you so much. Johnson, thank you. J-Girl, that's me. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you for the support over on D-Live. And over on YouTube, by the way, thank you for the super thanks on the last show. It looks like that was Peter Souza, 1407, and Thomas Murphy on last week's show. Thank you. Appreciate that. And Gaining Value, thank you for yesterday. Spiritual Sniper, Julie Pilkerton, and Bound by Mountains, and Bible Talk 777 over the last week. Thank you guys. Appreciate the support. And then Zelensky at UN. Russia's aggression posts threat beyond Ukraine. If you listen to this actual speech, this quote was in that speech, says that Russia is pushing the world towards the final war. The thing is that if I didn't know that all of the words in these speeches are carefully plotted out, then I wouldn't even think anything of it. If this was somebody doing it off the fly, then one thing. But this was something that many people have looked at, they approved, they wrote it for him. Speechwriters wrote it in there, or maybe he wrote it himself. I doubt that. But said the final war. I don't know why when he said it, the way he said it just creeped me out. And didn't say and maybe he's saying it on purpose. Maybe he's saying it to have that effect, right? Maybe he's doing that to have, because every time, who says that? They're pushing us towards the final war. Maybe it's because we are all assuming that this next war is our last, right? That it's end of the world, mutually assured destruction. And in the context, if you read the transcript, which we've attached over to the website, you will see they talk about weapons of mass destruction and nuclear destruction and all of these things. They continually talk about it. With the patterns we've seen, if they talk about something like this so much, Do you think that there's going to be zero, or do you think there's at least going to be one somewhere that could change the whole game, that gets everybody, red in the eyes and on the attack and angry about this and willing and supportive of some sort of action that the day before we would have never been supportive of? Take Pearl Harbor. How many people ran to go sign up for the military after that? Take any event where it was 2001. How many people ran to go join the Marines or the Army or the Navy or the Air Force after 2001 happened, right? How many things changed over those days? Once it hits us at home here, then it changes everything. Then all of a sudden we're getting involved and it's a world conflict. But it says that President Vladimir Zelensky said in his speech at the UN General Assembly on September 19 that the Russia's conflict against UKR poses a threat to global security as the Kremlin weaponizes energy and food against nations across the world. It says the president stressed that by blocking UKR's grain exports and attacking UKR ports, Russia seeks to escalate global food shortages and blackmail the world into recognizing the conquest of UKR's territory. It's a clear that Russia's attempt to weaponize the food shortage on the global market in exchange for recognition for some of, if not all, captured territory. It said that the president turned his criticism also toward partners who continue to block UKR grain imports despite the already dire situation caused by the Vladian blockade. It says that it is alarming to see some of our friends in Europe play with our solidarity in a political theater. It says, adding that these nations are inadvertently helping to set the stage for Moscow. Again, one of the quotes again was that Russia is pushing the world towards its final war, to the final war. The transcript is available on the website. Read it, tell us what you think, or watch again the speech. Again, when you read it in text, you can see a lot more. In fact, if you read something that somebody says, and if you read, you can see it from two different angles. It's kind of like reading a book compared to watching a movie. You can grab more and see more because you're not seeing the face telling you, or the other senses that you have when you're looking at somebody are not taking in all of the extra visual cues that they're giving you. You're reading it for the words that they are. It's something that I think that everybody should do on, especially some of these big, important speeches by the Ganda makers. All right, and Dex, I don't think you got time to. It's a long speech, so I don't think you could have watched the whole thing. But did you? What do you think is going on with all of this?
Well, anytime he's opening his mouth, I think he's asking for money, asking for commitment, asking for entrance into NATO, asking for more money again. And even if he says, "Hey, we're making great strides," he's still going to say it's not enough. You got to keep sending the money, sending the gear, preferably sending the money. That's my take on him. It just seems like every time he speaks, and of course he always wears the exact same thing, but at that point I think we're kind of beating a dead horse talking about his outfit. But anyway, he's there with his hands open begging.
Yeah, and it's like something that isn't another $25 billion dollars is going to go that way again, so that I think they're signing stuff for that now. Or did that already happen? I don't think we covered that yet. Isn't there a new one that hasn't happened yet, the $25 billion? Either way.
It seems like it's a weekly, if not monthly, occurrence at the state.
It's WW2 all over again. WW2, there was a conflict in Europe, and the Americans were shouting like, "Hey, we've got problems here. Why are we sending money and gear and weapons and everything over there?" And then Pearl Harbor hit, and we were jumped right in, just like we were jumped into a gang. All right, before we move on, I want to remind you guys, if you do want to get yourself a backup generator, this is one of the best on the market. It is one of the best, too, because it is so you can alter it in any way you wish. As far as it is a modular system that works like Lego. They don't ever say that, but it is the simplest way to put it. They're bricks that stack on top of each other. The top one being the head unit that is basically runs it with the computer, and everything down below can be changed out. So you have the battery bricks, you have a UPS rapid charger, which not only you can plug it in and charge each 1,000 watt battery in about 40 minutes or basically 1,200 watts an hour, but you can also do a supercharger mod that allows you to plug in 3 times the amount of panels. That UPS rapid charger actually works as a UPS, so you can turn it into an uninterrupted power supply, which means you can plug your fridge into this into the wall, and when your power goes out, it automatically switches over like a backup generator should. So those are all ways you can change this. There's also accessories, basically virtually low or very, very little watt accessories, like all sorts of different tools, like say a coffee maker that takes 3 amperage, or lights that take 3 watts each. Low amperage things that can plug right into it and essentially run forever on it, stoves and things like that. There's all sorts of potential for the future because they're making all sorts of low watt tools that you can use with this. On top of that, it is portable, so you can take it with you. You can take it to work. You can use it for powering your tools out in a field with no power around. Or again, you can get free power from the sun. This teamed up with a folding set of panels are not only portable, but you can put them out in your yard and start getting power and use it for something extra. So that doesn't go on your bill and it ends up going in your pocket. Other than that, though, this is silent. You will be a gray man with this. They do not make noise. And when their fan is on full blast, you might be able to hear it from about 3 feet, 4 feet away, but you're not going to hear it from 3 blocks away like a gas-powered generator. Not only that, you can run it inside your home. So that is something that it has a huge advantage over. If things hit the fan, another thing to think about is if you are actually going to be able to get fuel or gas. Now, some of you may have stockpiles of huge barrels of fuel, but not everybody, including myself, can even stock fuel. So especially if you're in an apartment or something, this is a much better route because you can put a panel up in your window when it's sunny and get some extra power. Go to marfooglenews.com/energy. Make sure to use the code Marfoogle. Not only will you save money, but you will help and, again, help our channel out. So thank you guys again for supporting Independent. These are great. This is also, they have the new tactical. Make sure to go check that out. That is the same one that is now going to be shipping out to the U.S. Army under the SBIR Phase 2 contract. This one was designed with the Air Force Research Laboratory, and that one actually has built-in heaters for extreme colds, 1,500-pound latches, and a steel reinforced frame. So that thing is literally built like a tank. So make sure to go check that one out as well. That is the Energy Flex Tactical. All right. And that's going to be modular in different ways, and all sorts of things are coming down the road. So as they make new mods and things for these, you can add onto your system and just keep adding on to make a beast of a system, or build it over time because they're not cheap. Lithium is going up in price, so you definitely, this is something you want to get yesterday rather than tomorrow, especially for some of the things we've covered with lithium, all of the countries that are fighting over it. So that's marfooglenews.com/energy, INERGY. All right, and then Dex, can you go over U.S. considering defense treaty with Saudi Arabia that includes Israel normalization?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. According to the reports, they're saying that there is a discussion with our current administration and the Saudi officials to create a similar pact, military pact, like what we have in Asia. And specifically, a couple of the things they're talking about is creating a guaranteed support if either Saudi Arabia or the U.S. is attacked in the region or on any Saudi territory. So in other words, we would be there to defend them. We would give military support, and they would do the same for us. This is, and I think the next thing they asked for was assistance in developing a civilian nuclear program, which again, we know that anytime we see countries that want to get a nuclear program, then that leads to them wanting to get to nuclear weapons, which is the next thing. And we know Saudi has said, hey, if Iran gets it, then we're going to do it. We don't care what you say. So those are all some concerns about this potential deal they're trying to broker. They're also trying to, in exchange for that, what Saudi Arabia was going to give our current president was the normalization or recognition of Israel as an independent country. So if you remember, our last administration got UAE to recognize United Arab Emirates, to recognize them as part of brokering better peace relationships in the Middle East. So it's an interesting negotiation that's going on. I'm a little concerned about this whole guaranteed support, because there's been this ongoing conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia for many years. It continues even to this day. They both support opposing sides when it comes to other little civil conflicts, skirmishes, T groups, whatever you want to call it, that happen around those areas. They're always on the opposite sides of one another. So I wondered that if this deal was to go down, would it instantly put us into or quickly put us into a direct kinetic conflict with the I country there. But on the flip side, there has also been relations between those two adversaries that has been brokered by China, and they're both joining BRICS. Both Saudi Arabia and Iran are joining BRICS. So it seems to be like maybe some of their inherent adversarial issues are kind of being squashed, but I still don't trust it. And that's what bothers me about this.
And G says that China and U.S. should and must achieve a peaceful coexistence. Chinese President Xi Jinping attends a plenary session of the 2023 BRICS Summit at the Santon Convention Center in Johannesburg. And out of this, Chinese President Xi Jinping told two U.S. Flying Tigers veterans who fought for China during World War II, again, that China and the U.S. should and must achieve a peaceful coexistence, offering further cues for both sides to lower persistent tensions. In his reply to a letter from former pilot Harry Moyer and pilot gunner Mel McCullen, Xi said that the people of China and the United States had shared the same enemy in their fight against Japan and had forged a, quote, profound friendship, according to the Chinese state media on Tuesday. It's crazy to think about that, too, that over decades now, they are our enemy and Japan is our ally. Looking into the future, China and the United States, as two major countries, bear more important responsibilities for world peace, stability, and development. It's so scary to me, too, that China comes out as this like peaceful thing. You look at how they treat their 1.4 billion people. And I've even heard of folks that like support how they do it. The way that they track their people, the way that they have facial recognition in every city, basically that have attached a number and a score to every single human being. That you cannot speak out, against the government. There's no freedom of speech in China, and as far as these guys are the ones kind of saying like, oh, we need peace. I don't think anyone's really fooled. China is looking for world domination. They have said publicly, and Xi has said publicly, under the heavenly mandate, they need to be number one. China needs, as far as their whole culture and religion, they need to be number one in the world. And they're never going to settle for number 2 or 3. And if you look at how they are building up their military, how they are stockpiling, did you know the numbers recently changed? Remember when we said that they had 55% of the world's wheat, 45% of the world's corn? Now they have 70% or something like that of the world's wheat, 65 or 60% of the world's corn. That number is going up. They are stockpiling. It is common sense. I mean, like, if you see that kind of stockpiling, it seems to me just really obvious. They are getting prepared for a massive war. That may be the Taiwan, but Taiwan is going to have at least Japan involved. And then Japan gets involved. Look what's happening with the U.S. U.S., and even if we don't back Taiwan, it sounds like Japan's going to get involved anyways. And then you see that we actually are doing like a 3-way NATO with Japan and South Korea. So basically somewhat agreeing with them if they take Taiwan and Japan goes, because Japan's going to war. They've changed their whole constitution to go to war with China. If they go to war with them, are we going to back up Japan? Even if we don't back up Taiwan and say one China, if Japan gets involved, then gets hit and hurt, Are we going to back them like we back NATO? That's what they're kind of implying with this whole three-way NATO thing with South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. So it's just crazy that they're saying call for peace, right? But they're the ones that are trying to change everything and gobbling up land, media ownership, and they own government positions and all sorts of things. His call for stable and peaceful ties followed a series of meetings and talks between the U.S. and Chinese officials in recent months, which we actually covered, Blinken, Kirby, all sorts of other meetings that took place, aimed at reducing tensions or restoring channels of communication between their militaries. Even though it's kind of funny, I bet, Millie's got it on speed dial, but the American volunteer group known as Flying Tigers was a fighter group comprising former U.S. pirates hired by the Republic of China, led by Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang, to fight against Japan. One thing I think is funny is Xi was directly talking to U.S. pilots. It's kind of ironic since they are literally trying to grab U.S. pilots for their carriers. Or at least they're grabbing former U.S. pilots to try to train new pilots on their side. Basically to do a traitor's action and go either fight for China or help them fight the U.S. Currently, China-U.S. relations face many difficulties and challenges. Chinese Vice President Han Zhang told the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly on Monday. The world needs stable and healthy China-U.S. relations. Well, I actually agree with the basic statement, but what does that entail? Does that entail us bowing? Is that us, doing the kneel for China? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Dex, do you want to go over Lukashenko insists Belarusians are most peace-loving nation, and there will be no war in Belarus?
Oh man, everybody's coming out with peace now. Everybody's saying that it's good, and I think it's because of the time. It's the UN meeting, it's the General Assembly. They all got to get their sound bites out to make themselves look and feel good in the presence of all the other country leaderships or all the other generals that are assembling at the UN. So, but again, here we have another similar scenario. In this case, it's Lukashenko coming out saying. And I'll just give you the exact quote addressing Belarusians today. As President and Commander-in-Chief, I want to assure you that we do not want to fight, and we will not fight, he says. There will be no conflict on the territory of Belarus in the current conditions because it's impossible. Now, I'm not quite sure what that means, but he did go on to say that if something does happen, God forbid, all of us will become the Brest fortress and we will defend our land to the last soldier and the last Belarusian man, which, for those of you that don't know, the Brest fortress was, it's part of the Soviet World War II monuments, and it's famous, the story of them defending themselves against the German army in the early days of Operation Barbarossa. So, again, it's words. He's saying this, but it's kind of interesting that everybody's kind of jumping on this, look at us, we're so good, peace train, whether it be China or Belarus or anyone else. They're all doing it, and it's all coming right at the same time that we're doing the UN meetings that are going on this week.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you for the support as well. Lukashenko is like a paid actor, in my opinion, but what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Carol, thank you so much for the super stickers. I appreciate that. Thank you. And again, thank you to the mods for holding it down and helping with links and things. Thank you, Jammer. I saw that earlier, so thank you. Scientists warn entire branches of the tree of life are going extinct. So there's such a, last time we covered a very similar thing, there was like this huge debate about whether animals were going extinct. I thought that was actually kind of a silly one. We know that animals are going extinct, but the cause is the big debate, right? It says humans are driving the loss of the entire branches of the tree of life, according to a new study published on Monday, which warns the threat of the sixth mass extinction. We actually covered the sixth mass extinction, and it's kind of freaky to listen to what they're saying. The sixth mass extinction, which there's been 5 other times where there was events where almost everything was went extinct. One of the most recent ones that everybody thinks about and talks about is the dinosaurs, right? The extinction crisis is as bad as the Great Change, and I call this the Great Change because it's just a beast of a thing. It says it is not recognized, said Geraldo Ceballos. It says a professor at National Autonomous University of Mexico and co-author of the study. It says what is at stake is the future of mankind, he told AFP. It says the study is unique because instead of merely examining the loss of species, it examines the extinction of entire genera. It says in the classification of living beings, the genus lies between the rank of species and that of family. For example, dogs, a species belonging to the genus Canis, itself is in the canid family. It is really significant contribution, I think, the first time anyone has attempted to assess modern extinction rates at a level above the species. It says, as such, it really demonstrates the loss of entire branches of the tree of life. So instead of dogs going extinct, help me out with this, Dex, is instead of the dogs going extinct, they're saying kinds of dogs, right? Or separate things that branch off from dogs that are closely related.
Right. So they're measuring, say, the Canis, which would then, encompass, say, wolves, and I think maybe even bears for that matter. They're somehow related. I don't know if they're in Canis or not, but there's a whole number of species that fall into the Canis genus, and hence the word canine, right? So yeah, they're looking at it as opposed to, let's see, like when the Bengal tiger is going to go extinct, or how its its current rate of survival is right now. They're going and they're measuring it at the much higher, a greater level, and saying, okay, we're going to look at this entire branch, and what is the rate at which extinction is maybe coming towards those branches.
An important part,
definitely an interesting way to look at it.
It said that out of 5,400 genera, so the branches above, multiple different animals, comprising 34,600 species, they concluded that 73 had become extinct in the last 500 years, most of them in the last 2 centuries, so in the last 200 years since modernization and everything else. Now, I personally believe that, yeah, humans most definitely had some part in animals. There's also things that are happening that are naturally happening that has kicked some of the animals off. One thing that I find strange is all of the sea animals having all of these die-offs and all of these beachings, and animals that have a magnetic kind of mapping system or a magnetic navigation system have been going the wrong directions. They've been going, their normal migratory systems are all messed up. That tells me there might be something wrong with the Earth or the poles or something else. Other than that, though, we've noticed bugs going extinct as well, or I shouldn't say extinct, bugs disappearing. They actually talk about the bees. If the bees disappear, so will we. Bees are extremely important for pollination and spreading everything, and they've talked about how, and everybody I know, too, has said, a lot of you have said, you've noticed less bees. What's crazy is just the last year and a half, 2 years, I have noticed that I've seen a lot of bees back again. So for a couple years, it was like I didn't see a bee for a couple years. So that sounds kind of wild, but it really seemed like there was no bees. As far as insects and things, people used the windshield theory. If you've never heard of this, and there's a lot of new people, any old school Foogle fam knows we've covered this a million times, but the windshield theory, if you don't know what that is, essentially when you drive on a long trip or even to work or whatever, we used to have, this is the claim, we used to have a lot more bugs that were smashed on the front of our car and on our windshield. And every time you'd stop, you'd have tons of bugs. Well, people are noticing, and this is a worldwide thing, and people have documented this, there's less bugs on the windshield and on the cars. So that means that with all the millions and millions and billions of people driving around the planet, there's less bugs hitting the cars. That's how a lot of folks noticed it, and that's why one scientist ended up going and looking and compiling a lot of this stuff. There are insects disappearing at crazy rates. So what do you think that this is? Do you think that this is biblical, like this is part of a big thing that's happening? Or, again, do you think that this is something that is being hyped up? Dex, go ahead.
The other interesting part about the math that they did in the study was it wasn't just that 73 went extinct in the last 500 years, but when they looked at the entire history, they should have expected only two, based on the average, based on how time had progressed. It's just that in the last 500 years, we lost 73, not two. It should have been two. It should have taken 18,000 years, not 500 years. It should have been 18,000 years to have 73 go extinct based on our past history, but we had 73 go extinct in 500 years. So it's kind of interesting. Now, again, it's all their hypothesis, it's all their theories, it's all their own math. I'm not one to tell you if it's true or not. It's just what they're reporting. And if it's true, it's kind of an interesting report. And I think, like you said, we've got a lot of other anecdotal things that we can sort of look at and say, yeah, we see this stuff happening.
Occam's Razor says, drive at night, then bugs will fly for miles just to get squashed in your car. Layla says, I haven't heard chirping in so long. No, but there's areas, somebody said also in Denver, driving down from Denver, get tons of them, right? But myself and many people here, that we've noticed it. Many people in other countries, Europe, noticed. There's a lot of folks. In fact, a lot of people are saying that they have noticed as well that they don't hit insects and things. As far as the animals, of course, there's whole channels dedicated to kind of the mass die-offs and the weird events. Jason A. used to do a really great job compiling all of the kind of crazy, weird die-offs that happen. In fact, there's a whole website. I forget what it's called, but it's a whole website dedicated to kind of the events. But it's like, I do partially believe, if you clear out a forest, everything that lives in that forest is going to be gone. But, that's why they should have things in place so they don't clear out complete areas if they have a specific animal and things that, lives there. But yeah, I'm sure that humans are responsible for some of that. But I wonder if they're going to then use this as part of the argument for the great change, right? Let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments down below. Before we move on, make sure to go check out EMP Shield, EMP, and CMEs as far as a solar event, which actually we're currently in a storm right now, a geomagnetic storm, which we didn't bring up Monday when that whole jet thing happened. We also had a huge, a bigger event happen to the Earth that was hitting us on Monday. So nobody really added it could have been like a solar disturbance, but now after looking back, it was like something else happened there. But as far as protecting yourself, protecting your cars, your trucks, and anything that runs, essentially you can get them for your motorcycles, your boats, your ATVs, your whatever RVs. You can get an EMP shield and actually protect it. What it does is it grounds the signal in less than 500 trillionths of a second before it can fry your device. This is actually Keystone military tested, and EMP Shield is outfitting agencies like DHS, DOD, and now the DEMSO team protecting the Texas grid. So I would recommend, of course, protecting ourselves, because the government, military, they're going to protect their own stuff, but they're not going to reach out and say, hey, here's a free EMP shield for your house. That's something we all have to do on our own. Most people are just going to depend on the military or the police when some bad disaster happens. I'd rather be able to, to be able to drive where I need to go to bug out, or drive home to get home to bug in. So if you want to do that yourself, this is really easy to put in your car or your truck. Again, the red to red on your battery, black to black, and green to a part of your frame, or green to ground. So less than 10 minutes, your car is protected and it will continue running. Very easy to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/EMP and use the code MARF. Again, very easy to do. As far as there's also a house version. That one you want an electrician for, but that will protect everything plugged in within 250 linear feet of where it is wired in. So that's also a really good one. Don't want to mess with your super powerful house electricity yourself, but once you do that, it's definitely a very cool thing to have. You don't need it until you need it, and that's the main point. Once you do need it, you'll be thankful that you did get it. All right, and then it helps us out, and it, of course, gets you a $50 discount off of each one. And then rebellion is brewing in Russia. Ukraine's National Security Council chief. Dex, do you want to go over this one? This is, according to UKR, We should have like a little theme song, like a little jingle button, like according to UKR.
Yeah, we should.
I'll work on it.
So yeah, this is coming from the National Security and Defense Council, Oleksiy Danilov, as a secretary of that. But what he's trying to say is there's not going to be another march like we saw with Prigozhin, but instead, what he's suggesting is there is a rebellion that is forming inside the Federation, and that it's very much akin to the coup that they attempted to do against Mikhail Gorbachev back when the USSR sort of fell apart and collapsed. So again, big grain of salt here because it's coming from their adversary, but it is what it is. But at the same time, it's interesting to look at the position they're taking. But they're trying to say that there is some, at least semblance of a group that is not happy with what Russia's doing or in the way the leadership is running, and that they're potentially forming their own alliances within the country to push that out. Now, I don't think, there's probably some truth to that. I mean, you can go to just about any country and you can find opposing forces, right? You can find them in our country. We have opposing politicals on each side that, will say all sorts of rhetoric on the other side. So I'm sure that does exist in Russia to some extent, and it probably even exists across the oligarchs and any of the people that are in power. Certainly. I just don't know how strong it is, and if it's something that would actually happen in a time period that's relevant to this current conflict or not. He seems to think it's going to happen relatively soon. So that's just what they're reporting.
And then 2 months to the day after his brief uprising against Vlad's leadership, which it's crazy, it's already been 2 months since the so-called mutiny, Yevgeny Prigozhin was taken out in a plane. I forgot to mention that during what's-his-face's speech to the UN, Green Shirt, he just like threw it in there casually. Just ask Prigozhin what he thinks about blah, 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 Vlad, or something like that. He threw something in there right before that line about saying Russia's pushing the world to the final war. He said, all the tricks they play, just ask Prigozhin, essentially telling the UN that, of course, Russia did it. Now a lot of people just assume that Vlad did it and took out Prigozhin. I still don't believe that, and it's not because I think Vlad's a great guy. I think he does take out people all the time. But I think there's something way more shady going on. The whole mutiny thing, I think Vlad might have even orchestrated that. Putin, that is. Because it was... I kind of believe that they were trying to figure out stuff. Or it was just all for a circus, for a big distraction, and they were high-fiving behind closed doors with, who knows, maybe some of our three-letter agencies. We don't know what's actually going on with this. But it says, the cause is still unclear. Russian President Vladimir Putin is strongly suspected of orchestrating the perishing of mercenary leader who had been challenging Moscow for months. And the challenging of that was so upfront, like all the headlines for months, like, oh, he talks trash about Russia. Russia's the one paying his check. This is the same guy who served Putin food in his home and served George Bush Jr., or George W. There's pictures of Yevgeny Prigozhin. If you missed this episode a couple weeks ago, we talked about how he used to be a private chef for the presidents. This guy was not a military guy, or at least he wasn't when he was a chef. And if you realize how close these chefs, these private chefs, and we don't know if he just catered that one event with the two presidents, but usually they're close with the presidents. Now, maybe Lukashenko says he knew him for 20 years. Maybe he knew him because he was Lukashenko's chef or something. I don't know. But he was a chef at one point, and he was named, what is the name for a Putin chef? Is it called a Putin chef, or it's a label for the chefs that they get if they're a presidential chef or something. Do you remember, Dex? Yeah, he's looking it up.
No, I don't. I just thought it was Putin chef because he owned the catering business that did all of the events for the Kremlin.
If somebody knows that label, it's a an accomplishment if you get that. I'm thinking Iron Chef, Poutine Chef, whatever it is. No, and it's not related to that. It's related to specifically Russia and that. So it's like he got that label. These chefs, which some disappear, some have mysterious accidents, these things, they are very close to the people they're cooking for. The reason why is because this person is making the food for somebody who is literally worried about getting poisoned or something else. If you're talking about vetting, probably the most vetted person in the White House or any other government building is the chefs. They're making food for some of the most important people in the world. So if they drip a little thing in there, they could take out multiple people in one go. That's why chefs are some of the most vetted people, and usually they're close to the people they are cooking for, because that is an intimate thing, eating. And if you are eating someone's food, there is no thing where food is put in front of you where there's no feedback, like, oh, this is delicious, this is wonderful, or hey, this is bad, take this back. There's none of that. And usually if it's a really fancy chef, you don't even think about that. You compliment, you don't say anything, you don't add salt, blah, 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 right? As far as this guy, though, then he goes into PMC and private military work, and then this whole thing between him and Vlad, it doesn't make sense to me. That's all I'm saying. If he is literally cooking food for Putin in pictures and even serving George W., then the guy is close with the people. That's my thought. As far as they basically say, this is the reason why it took so long for him to take him out, because they need a reason why Vlad didn't just take him out on the first day. They're adding to the story. A dramatic meeting at the Kremlin shortly after the failed rebellion suggests that Vlad was biding his time until he could ensue a smooth takeover of Wagner, which had become an important player in Russian foreign policy. It says on June 29th, 5 days after the rebellion was called off, Vlad gathered Prigozhin and his commanders in the Kremlin, which, again, they could have just taken them all out there. Heck, they could have had their new Putin chef sitting there and drop a couple drops in all of their food and taking them out. But no, they didn't. It says Putin asked the group if they would serve under a new leader, Alexei Troshev. The commanders nodded affirmatively. Yeah. Probably said, yeah, are they paying us? Sure, I don't care. But Prigozhin, who couldn't see their response since they were behind him, was adamant. No, the guys won't agree to that. Oh my gosh. They're literally saying that he's standing in front of all the commanders, and they're all like, yeah, sure. And he's like, no, they won't. This just looks embarrassing. That's corny. Like, you envision that scene of him standing in front of all these guys in line, and they're like, yeah, sure, yeah. And then he looks back, oh, no, we totally wouldn't do it. No, nobody but him. This is so silly. Like, this is just silly. It says that meeting may have sealed Prigozhin's fate. So letting Vlad know, like, oh yeah, we'll serve somebody else. We don't care. Whoever pays their bill. The June 29th meeting between Putin and Wagner leaders and Prigozhin was intended to show the disagreement between Prigozhin and the group's commanders about the organization's future, and thereby prepare experienced leaders of the group for Prigozhin's elimination. So much weirdness. Some believe that he's still around and that he's not even perished. The plane crash was very sus, to say the least, or at least in my opinion. They even put out something where at one point they said that there were 2 people on the plane that they said were missing the top parts of their body, specifically this part. And I'm thinking that is just absolutely the sussest thing I've ever seen. So were they up in the air and they went or something different? I don't know. But yeah. Either way, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Dex, did you think that this was kind of did you hear like the whole thing, like they're all standing behind him nodding yes, and then he's going, no, they wouldn't serve anybody else?
Yeah, when we first talked about it a while back when it happened, we sort of, I guess it was kind of odd. It was like one of those weird things. Like, yeah, was he that naive or that egotistical that he just thought he could speak on behalf of everybody behind him, and he didn't even bother to turn around and look? And they're all hot and shaking their heads, yes. But I guess when you put it all together, you could easily say make this claim. But least nobody knows the truth on any of these stories. So
Were
we'll
they
have to, it's just what they're reporting to us. So we got to take it for what it is. It's a big grain
Babylon?
of salt too.
Babylon B needs to say, also they threw in that some of the commanders were throwing up rabbit ears behind him. Yeah, because that totally makes sense. All right, and then let's see here. Thank you, Carol. Again, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Thank you, Carol. And let's see here. Hopefully MNN, thank you for being here. MOD, Mod, thank you. I like that. MOD. We got Seahart Think. Again, Paul Jordan, what is Uzo? Lucky Strikes are cigarettes, right? Yes, I believe they used to be. Are they still around? Michelle K, hopefully you took favorite book with you, says Chance. Alonzo Breck, yo! Greg Martin's in the house. Foogle. Make sure you got full jugs of water in the house. I agree. Also, look how to properly store water. I stored water for a long time that was not correct. And then, Uzo, I have one lemon left and not be able to enjoy. Let's see here. JG, what's going on? Every time I see your name, I think of J.G. Wentworth of the song. It's my money and I want it now. All right, Dex, let's go over the web only. Before you do that, just want to remind you, if you haven't already, make sure to go check out Harvest Right. If you have been wanting to get into freeze drying your own food, it's a third of the cost. Once you actually invest in the machinery to do it, this is the best way to preserve food, and it will preserve it for up to 25 years. You can customize your meal plans. You can customize everything. It becomes a hobby for almost everybody that gets into this. It becomes something that, turns into, doing it your own way. It's one of the coolest things ever because you can essentially make preserved, freeze-dried food of your own. Then in 20 years from now, you can pour water into or cook in water, and you have almost all of the flavor that you had originally, and you did it yourself for a third or a fourth of the cost. Again, there's $300 off on the Pro line, so make sure to go check them out. Harvest Right is one of the best brands out there. We waited to make sure that we got one of the best brands. Now, for those of you that, again, you can go get the pre-bought stuff, and that is for a lot of people. They just want to get it done and get a certain amount of food. This is a way to do it yourself. And again, it will be cheaper. Eventually, it will pay for itself, especially depending on how much you want to prep. If you have a large family, it would definitely be cheaper to go this route than buying bulk, 3 to 6 months to 12 months of food for each person in your family can add up. Average meal is like $15. So if you think about it in that way, this is a way cheaper to do it, especially for the bigger families, because you can do it yourself. They're essentially like set it and forget it type machines. So again, very, very easy to use and great results. So go to marfugglenews.com/freeze, one of the easiest ones to remember. marfugglenews.com, and then just add /freeze. All right. And there's a contest right now, so you can enter to win one. At least go over there and do that. And if you win one and you've already bought one, they even said that they would return the money that you spent on it, for the one that you just bought. So I thought that was really cool. All right, Dex, let's go over the web only. We got a lot of crazy stuff in here.
We certainly do. Head over to marfugglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or open up that show notes link down below in the description. It'll take you right here. Hey, one thing I did add, and I got a quick shout out to Jammer. He had found a news video clip of a gentleman that did say he heard a loud noise and boom from that allegedly from the F-35. He didn't see anything. He was brushing his teeth, I think is what is said in the video. So that is on the website. So if you guys want to go hear his very colorful description, feel free. It's there. All of this and what I'm talking about is in the overflow section. So when you get to the website for today's show, just scroll past everything we've just covered, all the sources and links to everything we talked about, and then you'll find this yellow bar, and the yellow bar says overflow, and that's where the rest of the story is. So you'll see that video. I embedded it there for you to watch. I think it's on a Telegram channel. But if you want to see it, there it is. We do have additional updates that are going on across the spectrum. Typically, we cover some of the political stuff here, so that is certainly right there as well. You can see the political coverage, what's going on with T-Man, what's going on with some of the people around him, also what's happening with some of the lawsuits, but also some of the other people that are running and what may or may not be going, including what people are starting to suggest may. I think there's even some people that are wondering if our current prez is going to make it to the next round himself. So that's an interesting perspective. So it's all covered there. There's a lot of the Russell conversation going on, including his demonetization on this platform and others. So that's all covered. If you're looking for additional updates on that, I know we talked about it in last night's show as well. We do have a little bit of things that are happening around the UKR event and what's going on with them in Russia, as well as some interesting AI stuff coming out of and their IDF and a super tank that they're building that's completely AI powered. That's kind of scary when you think about an AI powered tank. And its name is Barack. What? Yeah, Barack. What do you get on that one? So, and then all you guys up in Ohio, I guess you guys are building hundreds of flying taxis. So the governor just made that announcement too. So I guess we'll be seeing those at some point in the future in our skies around us. But that and so much more, it's all there on the website. Make sure you go to marfooglenews.com. We put it together for you every night. Just click on the thumbnail for the show. Or if you're on YouTube, just open up that show notes link down below in the description. It'll take you right here.
All right, thank you, Dex, and thank you to all of the wonderful mods. Thank you, Jammer. I saw that earlier. Thank you so much for helping people out and directing people the right direction. Thank you. And, of course, follow me over on Twitter, marfooglenews.com. No, I'm sorry, at Marfoogle. Very easy to find, at Marfoogle. And then, of course, we'll see you later. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for supporting tonight. I appreciate you. And thank you, everybody else from the last week. Julie Pilkerton, thank you so much. Carol, Sweatin' Ministries, Schaefer Girl, Cordalyn Franklin, thank you. Sweatin' Ministries, T-Pack, Kenny Camps, Nana MT, Samuel Turner, and of course, Be Real Beast, and Snow Leo. KT Cleans a lot, thank you. Peppermint, Be Real Beast, and Danish Girl, thank you, and thank you. It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a... what do you call it? Shoutro. The doors outside this, I'll find the word, let's close all of the doors outside this, I'll find the word, let's close all of the doors outside this, I'll find the word, let's close all of the doors outside this, I'll find the word, let's close all of the doors. Nice to see you, Truth Iris and Rick Johnson, thank you. Sean C, I Love Jesus Forever. David and Laura Reed. Ben, thank you. Marvin Funtime. W.I.S. Jen. Jonathan Floming. I am Maggie Dorsey. Pam R. Mike Bravo. We want more. James Garcia. Tina, I see ya. Hey, I'm big old Jarvis. It's some purpose. Hey, with an LLCC. Pray. Down at your wood yard. Hey. Outside this, I'll find the word. Let's close all of the doors. Outside this, I'll find the word. Let's close all of the doors. Outside this, I'll find the word. Let's close all of the doors. Outside this, I'll find the word. Let's close all of the doors. Mighty clean to lie and the car might work tracker. Only one away, man, and we are die. Act the food down in a rusty root. I say the royal down and the carry root. I say the cat no back. I on the Patriots up. I on the 41 and the Jonathan. Jonathan K. Waka. Everybody waka waka. Tell a joke, a lady in English. Hello, Marvin, I see a dish. They say the Alonzo break. Good job, brother. I say, oh no, I'll come to another. Terry Berry Monroe. We already know the real last tour and a Johnny the Flow. Make Carol, everybody know they know things. I gotta know, I know things. Winged eternally, I stand in agreement with Dustin off for the mark in the Jesus, somebody name. Island by the sea. Sean the G. Girl, that's just me. I get the bad Bobby. Marvin, fun time and the Audi. I'd be with the odd B and Mr. Go with the big boy Bobby. Hey, I would have one on B. With a Bobby and a one Oppie, a stealth mode, and a Mr. Jarvis, like a Tony Tanya, going right back and got it on ya. With a miss on me, with a miss on me. That's ideas, I find the word, let's close all of the doors. That's ideas, I find the word, let's close all of the doors. That's ideas, I find the word, let's close all of the doors. That's ideas, I find the word, let's close all of the doors. That's ideas, I find the word, let's close all of the doors. I said,